If you were following Japanese news in the past week, you may have noticed that the political world went through quite a roller coaster ride since Monday, with major news about the ruling party's leadership election breaking every few hours. This video will try to make sense of what is happening and how the turn of events impacts the Japanese public. The biggest thing on the Japanese Prime Minister's mind right now isn't containing the Delta strain of the coronavirus, or progress in vaccinations, or the Tokyo Paralympics. It is protecting his position as the Prime Minister as he is hanging on to power by a thread. Yoshihide Suga has seen his popularity dive in recent surveys, with the Mainichi Shimbun poll for August 28 putting his approval at a dismal 26%, with his net approval at negative 40 points. This is the third major poll that has put Suga's approval below 30% after Asahi Shimbun and NHK. In the same poll, 70% of people disapproved of Suga's handling of COVID-19, against 14% approving, which comes as a surprise to no one. This has prompted many in the ruling LDP to call for replacing Suga as their leader before the upcoming general election. The terms of the current members in the House of Representatives runs out in late October, so there's going to be an election sometime this autumn, so the LDP is rushing to shore up support. Younger LDP members are especially calling for a change at the top. For lawmakers still in their first to third terms, they have only ever fought elections with the popular former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe at the helm. The upcoming election is going to be the first time that these LDP lawmakers fight an uphill battle with an unpopular leader. In fact, the LDP has done poorly in every notable election under Suga so far, such as the Yokohama mayoral election, the Tokyo Metropolitan Assembly election, and special elections in Hiroshima, Nagano, and Hokkaido. This does not bode well for them, so they want to see Suga replaced with someone popular, or at least less disliked. On the other hand, Suga wants to keep his powerful position. After all, stepping down now would basically be political suicide, as he will be remembered as a prime minister who screwed up COVID policies and resigned in disgrace. And since he does not belong to a party faction, there is no one that will help him make a political comeback and no one whom he can use as a puppet in the future. So the only chance for LDP members to knock Suga off his throne right now is at the LDP's leadership election, which takes place on the 29th of September. Fortunately for Suga, and not so fortunately for other party members, Suga's challengers are not exactly the most inspiring. The first is Sanae Takaichi, the Internal Affairs Minister under former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. She is heavily favored by the right flank of the party, so think online right-wingers, historical revisionists, the Sankei group. She has failed to gain traction, mainly because not many in the public recognize her, and she has virtually no support outside of her small group of right-wing lawmakers unaligned to any faction. She is struggling to gain the 20 supporters among LDP lawmakers needed to file for candidacy. The second is Hakubun Shimomura, who is the head of policy for the LDP. This is where the first of the barrage news since Monday comes in. Shimomura briefly toyed with the possibility of launching a bid, even announcing that he had the 20 supporters needed to make a bid. However, Shimomura was called to the Prime Minister's residence Monday and demanded by Suga to resign from his current position as the party policy chief if he were to challenge the party leadership. He has since declared his intent to not run in the race. The third is Fumio Kishida. Kishida is by far the strongest rival for Suga. He is the leader of his own faction, so he comes with a relatively strong base of core supporters. He also comes with ample ministerial and party leadership experience. But Kishida faces issues of his own. For one, Kishida isn't any more popular than Suga himself. In surveys asking the public who they want to see as prime minister, Kishida is often placed very close to Suga, while three big names, Ishiba, Kono, and Koizumi, have been topping the rankings. Kishida's past media exposure has shown him as the sidekick to Abe, and not someone notable in his own right, so Kishida will have to work hard to convince the public that he's a leader. The second issue is that Kishida's faction is only the fifth biggest in the LDP, and most of the other factions backed Suga the last time Kishida ran for the LDP leadership last year. He needs to peel away factional support for Suga, and he's especially taking aim at the biggest and second biggest factions, which are home to Shinzo Abe and Finance Minister Taro Aso respectively. To make up for the lack of popularity and of factional support, Kishida has adopted a strategy of painting himself as the staunchly opposed candidate to Suga's style of politics. Specifically, he has criticized the concentration of power in the LDP and released a plan last Thursday to overhaul party rules, including limiting tenures of party executives to up to 3 straight terms. The move is a direct attack aimed at Suga's right-hand man and the number 2 of the party, LDP Secretary-General Toshihiro Nikai. Nikai was the mastermind of the plan to make Suga, who does not belong to any faction, the successor to Shinzo Abe at last year's party leadership election. Suga returned the favor by keeping Nikai in the position of Secretary-General, which gives Nikai immense power over many internal issues, such as selecting which candidate to back as a party in elections around the country. Those disgruntled with Suga's leadership blame Nikai for keeping him at the helm, so they want to drag down the seasoned veteran as well. The anti-Nikai forces have latched on to Kishida's party rule overhaul, as limiting executives to 3 terms or 3 years is not so veiled criticism of Nikai having been Secretary-General since 2016. Nikai is also a political enemy for Abe and Aso, who were pressured into backing Suga in last year's leadership race out of fear of losing influence to Nikai. Because Nikai is hogging the Secretary-General seat, the two can't expand their sway in intra-party personnel matters. Kishida is basically courting Abe and Aso by saying that Nikai will be left out of the equation once he is in power. However, it isn't that easy to corner the seasoned Machiavellian Nikai. In a bombshell turn of events, it was learned late Monday that Suga will shake up the party leadership, which includes replacing Nikai as the Secretary-General. The move effectively makes Kishida's anti-Nikai stance meaningless. Now, some view the move as Suga backstabbing Nikai to protect himself. This analysis fails to take into consideration the fact that Suga cannot afford to lose Nikai's support in the LDP election, and more importantly, that Nikai did not put up a fight and calmly accepted his being removed from the post of Secretary-General. What is more likely to be the case is that Nikai actually backs his own ousting. Why is that? It could be that Nikai was able to secure a favor in a backroom deal in exchange for his removal. Some speculate that it could be an LDP backing for his son, who intends to succeed Nikai in his constituency after he retires. There are also rumors that Nikai has secured a more lucrative position in the party. Whatever the case, Nikai's willingness to step away from the Secretary-General seat means that the move is less of a damage to Suga and more of a blow to Kishida, as his main line of attack against Suga has been neutralized. It should be noted that Nikai's strength in the LDP does not come necessarily from his position as Secretary-General. Especially when it comes to his relationship with Abe, Nikai has an ace up his sleeve in the form of knowledge about the shadier side of politics. As Abe's Secretary-General, Nikai knows the ins and outs of Abe's possible involvement in many bribery and graft scandals, such as the one related to the use of 150 million yen in party funds for a vote-buying scheme for an Abe-backed candidate in 2019. Angering Nikai is a risk for Abe and the LDP at large, so whatever his official title, Nikai will still play a big role in the party. While Kishida's bid is gaining some traction, Team Suga is somewhat confident that they can beat the challenger and the LDP presidential election. The bigger worry for the Prime Minister right now is whether any of the more popular LDP lawmakers will launch a challenge of their own. Specifically, Suga is worried about 2 of the 3 big names mentioned earlier. Shigeru Ishiba, the former Secretary-General, has said that he has not made up his mind about the presidential election, while Taro Kono, the minister in charge of the country's vaccine rollout, has voiced support for Suga but has not denied the possibility of running himself. Both are playing the waiting game, laying low until a prime opportunity comes to either throw their hats in the ring or fully throw their support behind Suga. The waiting game is getting on Suga's nerves, so he's doing something to make them make up their minds earlier. It was reported Wednesday that Suga may appoint Kono and Ishiba to important positions in the upcoming party leadership shakeup, with Kono possibly becoming the party policy chief. By appointing the popular politicians in the Suga team, the Prime Minister is hoping for a popularity boost of his own, while at the same time making sure that Kono and Shiba stay on his side instead of opposing him. Suga is expected to announce the LDP's new leadership team next Monday, so until then we'll have to wait and see who he'll appoint. In any case, he is expected to use the opportunity to dish out executive positions to powerful people to win their backing, fortifying his chances of beating Kishida. All of what I've explained so far excludes the biggest news to come out in the past week, and that is Suga's now abandoned plan to call a snap election early. It was initially reported that Suga is considering dissolving the House of Representatives in mid-September, soon after he announces the new LDP leadership team. In Japan, the Prime Minister has the authority to dissolve the lower chamber and call a snap election at almost any time. The move would push back the LDP's leadership election schedule, giving Suga the advantage. As the biggest thing that Kishida has going for him right now is that the LDP is likely to lose less seats at the lower house election with him at the helm, an LDP leadership election after the general election means that people would lose the biggest reason to vote for Kishida. Suga has since denied the possibility of dissolving the lower house in mid-September, saying that he cannot call an election early given the state of the COVID crisis in Japan. This comes after many in the party, including Abe and Aso, showed opposition to the idea. A mid to late September general election would be good for Suga personally, but a disaster for the party as a whole. An unnecessarily early election would give the public the image that the LDP is putting politics above necessary COVID measures. This prompted even those close to Suga to urge him to drop the plan. Now, what does all this mean for the Japanese public at large? Suga has shown that he will go to great lengths to defend his position as prime minister, and that all the political theater would likely keep LDP lawmakers extremely busy. That obviously means less time for Suga and people in the LDP to spend on actual governing, which is a major issue, especially in the COVID crisis. A small minority of LDP members argue that now is not the time to be bickering within the party for who should be in power, and that the infighting should be left aside while the government focuses on containing the latest wave of COVID-19, triggered by the Delta variant. But those voices are falling on deaf ears, and even in the best case scenario in which there is no unexpected snap election or unexpected challenger in the LDP race, the ruling party will be preoccupied with their presidential race until the 29th of September, and unable to fully focus on governing until then. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments what you would like to see in future videos.